Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 396. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. Get ready to talk about that Grayson thing, as we are joined by longtime friend of the show, Tom King. So says the sensei of the Whatnot Segulent and the Duke of You Know.
How's it going, eh?
On this episode, we are joined by Tom King as we discuss his work on Nightwing number 30 and the upcoming series Grayson. Really excited to have Tom a part of the show. We also reveal what's going to be the contents of our upcoming episode 400, which we're really excited about. So, big packed episode. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the DCinfinite.com podcast partnership. Sponsoring this episode is once again DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, you can pick up Grayson number 2, regularly $2.99, 40% off, only $1.79. Grayson digs deeper into the mysterious organization known as Spiral and learns more about his new partner, Helena Bertinelli. They also have the variant edition available for $12. If you are a fan of digital comics, be sure to link your accounts, especially Comixology and My Digital Comics, your accounts, to your DCB Service account. 5% of those purchases go towards your DCB Service order. Plus, you're helping out a sponsor to the show by shopping through the website that way. It doesn't cost you anything more, but it gives something back to people who are supporting podcasts. Over at InStockTrades.com, if you haven't been reading Nightwing, it's your place to pick up and get caught up on the series. Nightwing Trade Paperback Volume 1, Traps and Trapezes, is $14.99 regularly. It's 42% off, only $8.69. This is a very inexpensive way to get caught up on the new 52 Legend of Dick Grayson. So be sure to check that out over at InStockTrades.com. Remember, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping, and I want to thank both of those websites for sponsoring our show. Mr. Segulent, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on the show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Without further ado, let's talk to Tom King.
Carter Hall, scientific genius from a far-off world, flies into action as Hawkman.
Joining us, and actually it's a welcome back to the show, is author Tom King, who is the co-writer on the upcoming Grayson series, and we're going to be talking very spoilery about Nightwing number 30. So I know we do an announcement at the beginning. I just want to say again, if you haven't read Nightwing number 30, make sure you read it before listening to this discussion, because there's a lot I want to talk about in this book. But Tom, welcome back to Raging Bullets.
What a great pleasure. I love this podcast. I loved being on it before. Thank you for having me again. Really an honor.
It's great to have you back. Actually, I want to a little geek out before we start talking about Nightwing. I haven't had a chance to talk to you directly since reading your Valiant short stories, and I really quite enjoyed those. I'm a big Valiant fan.
So all right.
I enjoyed Once Crowded Sky, which we had you on for last time, but then you did those Valiant shorts. They're the part of the Kindle Worlds line of the short stories that are available on Amazon.com. There were 2 Harbinger ones that you did. You Are Not the First, and There Will Be More After You, and Salvation Sally, and I really enjoyed both of them. I thought it's a cool thing that Valiant was doing with those.
Thank you so much. Oh, I love those, and I don't talk about them enough. So thank you for reading them and for mentioning them. Yeah, I was approached by Amazon. I mean, first Valiant called me and said, we're looking for authors to sort of write in our world. And Amazon approached me, completely independent of Valiant, and said, this is before they launched this whole Kindle Worlds idea of monetizing fan fiction, basically. And they said, we're looking for authors. We'll give you pay. We'll pay you for the short stories to launch this and sort of get it started. And they said, I said, what do you want me to write? They said, just write what you want. Write a fantastic story. And I really love the Harbinger universe. I'm a Valiant fan. So I wrote two stories that I adore. I wrote them a little while back, so I don't think of them too often. But yeah, thank you so much. That rocks.
Yeah, it's. I wanted to mention that because a lot of times we don't realize that our comic book worlds will delve into other medium. And I'm a big fan of that exploration of, like, what are these characters like if you do it in, more of a prose format. And I thought the Harbinger books were great. I'm a big fan of the world. I was a big fan of the old Valiant. And then when they did this relaunch of Valiant, I was really excited for it. And the books have just been a home run, hitting it out of the park. And I saw you on these, and obviously I really enjoyed your writing in A Once Crowded Sky. So it's great to see you have an opportunity to kind of play around with different worlds and things. So it was neat.
Don't tell the Valiant editor. God, I love that place, and I'd work for them in a second. Those characters, because that original world they created was so interesting in how third-dimensional their characters were, how, like, there's so many shades of gray inside these characters. They're still heroes, but they have like such complex motivations. So just the opportunity to play with them was amazing. Especially that Harbinger world, because Harbinger to me comes out of sort of that X-Men side of comic books. And I grew up like a super X-Men fan, like I don't know, most kids of my generation. Just freebasing Chris Claremont as we grow up. So to me, Harbinger was an extension of that, except like almost a little more mature. I wrote 2 stories because my original book, Once Crowded Sky, is a superhero book in prose. So I've written superheroes in prose before, so it did come naturally, a little naturally to me at least, in terms of being able to take that concept seriously without making it silly. And I wanted to write... I wanted to write Harada, but...
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone wants to write Harada, right?
Yes.
I wanted to write sort of my best New Mutant story, my best like a New Mutant introduced to the X-Men kind of story, or a mutant coming into Harbinger. So I wrote that, and that's Salvation Sally. And then I wanted to write sort of a story about Harada. I used to be in the CIA, and I used to do a lot of counterterrorism and espionage work. And I wanted to do sort of Harada as the guy who could outthink any spy or any spy organization. And that's what the second story is about. With that very long title you gave at the beginning. You're not the first, and there will be more like you.
I was glad that there was a follow-up, because I really enjoyed the first one, and then when I saw that there was another one, I'm like, oh, this is great, because I want more of this. That actually brings me to my first question for you. It kind of applies to Harbinger and Nightwing and Grayson. When you wrote A Once Crowded Sky, you had the canvas was yours. You had a lot of freedom as far as developing in your mind the characters' backstories, how they behave, how they react to the world around them, and things like that. When you go to Harbinger and Nightwing, it's different, because these are characters that have been established, and you have opportunities to move them into new status quos based on the situations that you're creating, but you also have to skirt that. You have an interesting line that you have to skirt as far as, how do I make sure that these characters aren't unrecognizable, but at the same time, I'm giving people something new, something exciting in the world with that character. And actually, probably, it even applies even more to what you're doing now with Grayson, with the character. What are some of the, how has that been for you? What are some of the challenges that you've faced compared to writing A Once Crowded Sky?
Oh, it's such a good question. First of all, to me, one of the sort of bucket list goals of writing was to write these characters. I love writing my own characters. I love writing that world because I know them. They're my heart, and I can do anything with them. But to write within that challenge, to write a Spider-Man or a Batman or Dick Grayson, for God's sakes, is why I got into writing. I respect sort of that idea, that image idea, and I want to do it where you can create your own characters and do that. But when I read comics as a kid, I read mainstream Marvel, DC comics, and Valiant. And I loved what the writers did. They had to work within those walls, and I loved those walls. I didn't want to see Spider-Man die and not be there then the next issue. I didn't want to see... to use an apt example, I didn't want to see Batman suddenly pick up a gun and go Punisher on people.
Right.
I wanted to see those characters stay those characters, but still have them written to the limits of who they are. So to me, to be offered that, it's not sort of like someone saying to you, oh, we want you to write something, but you can't write this, you can't write that. I want them to say that to me. It makes me feel like I'm part of the club. It sounds really weird. I have a great example. So I'm doing, for Grayson, I'm doing the first... the Future's End crossover. It's my first issue I'm scripting the whole thing for. That's going to be Grayson Future's End #1. When I first got that assignment, I wrote up a plot, and they said, oh, well, something's, about the events changed, do the plot again. And I wrote up the plot again. Oh, something about the events changed, and I wrote up the plot again. And I found myself being like, oh, man, these events, they really screw over your plot. I got so happy feeling that, because I had spent 20 years of my life hearing creators say the exact creators I loved saying those exact words, that I suddenly felt like, oh, I'm doing it. I'm doing the dream, the thing I always wanted to be. I'm whining about the things everybody else wants. So to me, I realize it's corporate and they put those boxes around you, but having watched so many fantastic artists strive under those boxes, inside those boxes, I'm just glad to be inside.
That's cool. It's actually cool to hear it from that perspective. How did you get involved in this? Like, because Nightwing, for me, it kind of came from out of nowhere. Because of the fact that I think everything was so under wraps, usually you hear a lot more ahead of time, if that makes sense, about where a character's going and status quo. But I think they tried to keep such a lid on what was going to happen with Dick Grayson that it was all of a sudden, we knew that something was happening in Forever Evil with him. There was the reveal that everyone knows now Dick Grayson was Nightwing. But we didn't know, was he going to survive? Was he not? How is that going to play out? You make assumptions, but you don't know. And they really did a good job of kind of keeping that under wraps until as close as possible where they needed to start revealing that, hey, look, there's going to be a new series launching called Grayson, and here's what's going on. How did you get involved in this? What was the approach? How did the whole process go for you? Because that's a big score. It's very cool.
Yeah, I remember we talked about this last time when I had done the Time Warp story, and you guys graciously had me on, that I was pitching Vertigo, and it sort of didn't go well, and then I was in talks with them. So I did the Time Warp story, and it got a really fantastic reception, not least because you guys did a wonderful podcast about it. And so Vertigo had me pitching StorySim, and I was working with this editor who's a brilliant, kind, gentle man, and so handsome, named Mark Doyle, who was brilliant. And if you love things like Scalped, for example, or American Vampire, that's Mark Doyle. And we were working together on developing a series. There was a editorial switch up. Now, separate to all this, I had been working with the Batman office with Mike Martz, who is equally an intelligent, genius, handsome man. The two of them probably win first and second most handsome man, slightly behind DiDio and Johns, and the damn sexy Joe Quesada. I don't know. Axel Alonso. Oh man. I mean, there's just so many handsome people in comics. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Who are looking for writers?
Looking for writers? I write for a living. I had been working with Mike Martz on a Batman pitch. I'd actually done an issue for him that hopefully someday will run. It's one of those issues like if somebody misses a deadline, they throw my issue in. And so I'd had some contact with the Bat Office, and Martz left to go to Marvel. He's editing the X-Men books now. And Mark Doyle moved over to the Batman books, who I'd been working with. And we'd had a bunch of pitches that sort of went forward and came back, and we've been doing on some stuff. And he dug my stuff, and he said, "Tom, I'm fine. I'm at the Bat Office. I have a little more say. Do you want to work on a book?" I said, "Yeah, of course, yes." And he's like, "I'm working on this thing where Tim Seeley. Do you know who Tim Seeley is? Is like, I'm a huge Revival fan, and
absolutely,
yeah, right. If you're not reading Revival, pick it up. It's like it's not a zombie series, but it's like if you love Why the Last Man, that concept of like one mysterious haunt that goes for many issues, pick up Revival. So a big fan of Tim Seeley, and we're working on a new book for Dick Grayson. Now, Dick Grayson is probably one of my top 3, if not my favorite character of all time.
Nice.
If you've read Once Crowded Sky, the star of the series is a Nightwing archetype. I said, before he could finish whatever he said, the next sentence could have been, we want you to, color in his hair in every issue. Or, I used to erase pencil lines when I was an intern. Maybe they wanted me to erase the pencil lines. I was like, yes, whatever. Yes, of course. Dick Grayson, Tim Seeley, this is awesome. And then he said, we're going to do sort of Dick Grayson Super Spy. Dick Grayson as the greatest spy in the DC universe. And I used to be a spy. I used to be in the CIA. And I was like, I think I can do that. I used to be a spy. I love Dick Grayson. Put me in the game, Mom. I was in.
That's awesome. Well, especially because you have such an affinity for the character, but then there's your own personal background. You have an opportunity to bring in and put Dick Grayson into that. That's kind of a neat way to go about it.
Yeah, I know. I've said this in other interviews, but I can't talk about obviously like the actual spy stuff. I'm very much sworn to secrecy.
Right.
But I can talk about sort of the emotional side of it and the character side of being a spy, because obviously a spy in the DC universe is not going to operate the same as a spy in our universe. There's slightly more constraints on us here and there's a slightly smaller mission when people can't fly. But those moments, those emotional moments that come with it, the idea of being behind enemy lines or leaving your family behind and lying to everyone you love, those things are universal and will be featured in the story. And those I've actually experienced, and I've dealt with them, and I can sort of say, look, we should focus on this or focus on that. So I can take that emotional core of my experience and put that into the book.
Well, we see a lot of that in the Batcave fight in Nightwing 30, which I really loved. Because
you love the Bat. Oh, I love you, man.
Because the fight, to me, I'm a big fan of the emotional resonance that goes on in a comic book. You know, I want to feel like I know where these characters are coming from and where their backstory is and why they're at this moment. And Dick and Bruce have been through so much at the time of this fight, you know, especially with what happened with the Joker and obviously Forever Evil and everything, but there was such a build there with the two of them that it was all coming out in that fight, not just in the physical battle, but in the dialogue between them, where Bruce is really testing the waters for this concept of his, and it's, you know, Dick Grayson knowing who Bruce is waiting for that, you know, other, like, he knows that, like, what are we doing this for? Come on. I mean, you know, there's something coming from Batcave Fight Club that, like, is
That's awesome.
that, like, you know, is really, and I really loved that about this moment, because it was not only a build for Dick Grayson, it was a build for the rest of us, even though we knew where this was heading, because if you'd seen the announcement about what Grayson's premise was, we didn't know how they were getting from, how, you know, the characters were going to get from A to B. How was this going to go? So seeing how that played out, it was like in real time in the fight. I loved that aspect of the fight.
Yeah, it was, there were so many reactions to Nightwing 30 that I found interesting. Some people love it, some people hate it, and I actually understand both reactions. When I wrote Crowded Sky, it did well, and I make a living off of it, but it didn't. It's not Nightwing. It's not in everybody's living room and everyone's mind. So the overwhelming reaction I got on the internet all of a sudden was amazing to me, and the negativity was actually fairly constructive, and people were coming very much from a place of love with this character. To me, the issue is we announced, okay, Dick Grayson's super spy, and everyone said, okay, he's going to be sort of Dick Grayson, agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. But that's not exactly what we're doing. And what we couldn't tell anyone until Nightwing 30 came out is that he's not an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., he's penetrating S.H.I.E.L.D. Oh, that sounds different, but... You have to watch out with Dick Grayson. There's always dick jokes. But... He's our man inside. Oh man! So you can't say it. There's no way to not sexualize this whole thing. There's an organization called Spiral that's doing something bad. They're doing something slightly evil. They're looking for the secret identities of the superheroes, and they're trying to out them all. And Dick Grayson is going inside Spiral. He's going to be an agent of Spiral, but at the same time, he's Batman's man inside. He's working against Spiral, so he's already a double agent. Now we couldn't have that in the first announcement. Everyone just saw Dick Grayson spy, but it's a little more complicated than that. And that's why people said, why is he having a gun? He's basically undercover as a spy. He's spying on a spy organization. And to get to that moment where he agrees to do something as dangerous as that was what the Bat Cave scene was about. That's a long answer for your question. Let's get into details.
Yeah, I mean, it is a really interesting scenario, though, because the book does open, and I didn't talk about this, and I'm glad you started to head in that direction. It opens with this great... I'm a Leslie Tompkins fan, so anytime you have an opportunity to bring her in, because she hasn't been featured prominently in the New 52 in the way that, you know, I would like for the character. And I'm a fan of actually, you know, when the time's right, you start really showcasing characters in ways that make sense. She was a perfect use right here because you're showing her how she was influenced by Bruce Wayne and that whole experience that he went through as a kid with his parents' death and how, you know, that kind of shocked her into action to take this role. But she winds up, because of an attack on her camp, being saved by her Spiral, but then being victimized by them, which was a great way to like tease us into the Batcave fight and the reason why. And we didn't know until Batman revealed it what Spiral was actually doing, other than you had Leslie there afterwards wondering what she said, what she did, not knowing. So we didn't have the actual, we had pieces of the puzzle. I'm a fan of that delivery where we're slowly led to like the promised land, so to speak, of what Spiral's all about. The journey part was neat for me because this was an issue that I was anticipating. Did you know all along you were going to be doing 30? Like you guys were going to be involved with the Nightwing 30?
No, I mean, some of this has come out on Bleeding Cool and everything, but there was a beautiful issue written by James Tyrion III that was sort of an elegy to Nightwing. It was sort of the burial issue. I've read it. It's a very nice, it's a very good issue. And it was originally solicited as, I believe it's the annual, and then they changed it to Nightwing 3. That's why it's 30 pages instead of 20-some-odd pages. And the idea was sort of say goodbye to Nightwing in a funeral issue. And the decision was made way above my head that instead of having it sort of be a goodbye to Nightwing, it would be a sort of a hello to Grayson. It would be a transition issue between the two series. So we were brought in to write that transition, sort of to do a Grayson issue 0, but call it Nightwing 30. But the art for that is online. You can find it if you look at original Nightwing or 30 art, and it's beautiful, and it's a beautiful issue. And there's nothing actually wrong with it. They just decided to go in a different direction.
Well, they seem to be doing that with a lot of the books that are being... They did the same thing with Suicide Squad, with a lot of the books that are being relaunched.
Yeah.
Out of spinning out of Forever Evil, kind of doing a handoff from one series to the other, which I get the point, because this really does set you up with the premise for Grayson. Because a lot of times there's a danger when you end a series of giving readers a jumping off point instead of a jumping on point. So I love this issue because it felt like a jumping on point to Grayson instead of a jumping off point for Nightwing. I think there's a point to that when it's story driven.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what we're going for. So I really appreciate it, and it helped. It really helped Tim and I because there's a ton of exposition. I wrote. Tim put this out on Twitter. Tim wrote the first third. I wrote the second, the Batcave thing. We wrote the third part, which is really a preview of what Grayson will look like together. And we wanted to put a lot of exposition in this issue. We wanted to set up those basic things. We have a spy organization stealing secret identities. Batman's put him on a secret mission. So that when Grayson #1 hit the stands, what we could give you was an action issue. We could hit the ground running. We didn't want to have a bunch of characters sitting around talking for 20 pages on our first issue. We wanted to have Dick Grayson being a super spy. We wanted to have that cold open from the James Bond movies in our first issue. And because we had Nightwing 30, because it's all set up now, we don't have to bother with that exposition. We can just jump right into it. So that was a huge opportunity for us.
Now, when you guys are working together and creating the co-writing stuff, I'm kind of curious how you actually are. Is it like the giant meeting room where you're like, hey, what about this? What about this? Or is it an idea? Hey, what about adding this? How do you guys work that out?
I've never met Tim in person. I know him. I'm a huge podcast nerd, so I knew him from the Crankcast from back in the day.
Yeah.
And I'd heard him on. He comes from that Chicago school, like the Around Comics gangs, this John Suntress, Wordbloom people. So I knew him from back in the day, but I've never actually met him in person. We've talked on the phone a billion times. The process sort of it's different. For Nightwing 30, it was a little different. We got on the phone and we said, okay, what do we have to do? And it was pretty easy to draw this up. It was exactly like you said. We wanted one part where we see a victim of what Spiral does. We wanted the mission, the Batman assigning the mission, and then we wanted sort of a preview of what this super spy, Dick Grayson super spy, will look like. So that was an easy plot to come up with, and then we just divided it into pieces and wrote it. And he said, "Okay, you script the second part, I'll script the first," and then we combined for the third. For Grayson, what we did was the two of us. We came up with the first arc was sort of where we wanted to start, where we wanted to end. We were on the phone. We said, okay, what's the character arc we want for Dick? And what's the character arc we want for Helena? And what's the character arc we want for our villain, who you haven't seen yet? And then after having done that, we went through and said, okay, well, you script these issues, I'll script those issues. And it basically works out to scripting 2 issues at a time. So he's scripting the first 2, I do the next 2, and then we sort of trade off from there. And we plot it, we send it to the other one, and he looks over my plots, he says, okay, I like how these comments, and he sends it back, and then the same thing happens with the script. He scripts it, sends it to me, I say, okay, I don't like that part, and then we change it. So it's almost like we're each other's first line of editorial.
You said something earlier that I'd like to touch on a little bit. You were talking about how you read a lot of the internet feedback on the fight sequence, and you found some constructive pieces in there. How do you as an author deal with that? Because there's a danger of taking too much of that in and derailing like a direction, which ultimately, the fans that are very nervous or worried about the direction for their character, if they give the journey a chance, will see, love the character. We're honoring the character. You'll see. You just got to give us, go along for the ride. But by the same sense, I like the part where you're like, hey, but I did find some constructive pieces in there that I could pull out and use for myself. How do you balance that? Because I can imagine there's a strong part of being able to get fan feedback and internalize it and use it. But there's also a danger of taking too much of that and derailing a direction in a way that it makes your goals unidentifiable. How do you balance that as a writer? Because I'm sure you dealt with that with your book. I'm sure you've dealt with that with the short stories. You've dealt with that with Nightwing now. How do you balance that out? Because that's got to be very tricky.
Yeah, it is tricky. And it goes back to, I remember when I was first doing Crowded Sky and I was, still working as basically a full-time father, taking care of my kids during the day. And I had Cliff Chang, who's the Wonder Woman artist.
Yeah.
He was my original artist on Crowded Sky before Tom the Brilliant. I say a lot of people are brilliant. Before Tom Fowler came in. And I remember talking to him on the phone, and we were sort of chitty-chattering. And I hadn't in years, but I've been out of comics, and I was talking to a real comic creator, one I really admire. Cliff Chang's work is gorgeous. And I asked him at the very end, I was like, hey, can I ask you a question? Yeah. I was like, how do you deal with all the people who say you're shitty on the internet? I didn't mean that. I didn't come out like that, like people say you're shitty. But, because my book was coming out, and I knew it was going to get reviews. And I was like, you probably just ignore it, and you go strong, and you just, keep going. He's like, no, I don't ignore it. And Cliff said this to me. He's like, I read it because there are ways I can get better, and sometimes they hit upon them. You just have to be smart to recognize the good from the bad. And I remember thinking, wow, what a brave man to read his stuff. And that really came back to me when Nightwing 30 came out. Because when Crowded Sky came out, it got really great reviews. It didn't get one bad review in print. And Time Warp also was a very simple story and got great reviews. So when Nightwing 30 came out, I was almost unprepared for. People are passionate about this, and they see themselves in these roles, and they have very strong reactions, and they go and post them. And I started reading them, and I was just like, am I ready for this? Am I sort of ready for people to say something I worked on was a piece of shit? And you, as a writer, you immediately sort of say, but wait, you don't understand. The editor told me to do that, or, you make up 1,000 excuses, or you wait until you see. But you have to sort of get beyond that. You have to have enough of an ego to sort of say, to commit to your art and what you did and your vision. And you also have to see that buried in those comments is a lot of love. Mm-hmm. Like Dick Grayson is a character a lot of people grew up with. He's a lot of people's sort of entree into comics. You love him when you're a kid and you grow up with him. And on top of that, he's a lot of people, especially in he has a lot of female fans and a lot of people in the lesbian, gay, bi community who are fans of this, who sort of see them as their entry and sort of their character. And to see him get punched in the face by a guy who's considered his father over and over again was disturbing to them. And when I read their comments, I was like, yeah, I can see that. I understand why they would feel that way. And so it was a new way to think about the character, because I was thinking it totally from a character point of view. To me, the story was Batman and Dick have a fight, and Dick wins. I wanted it to be, I love Dick Grayson. I think he could beat Batman in a fair fight. But when I say fight, I mean a fight where Batman doesn't hold back. Because if it's just a fight where Batman holds back and Dick wins, who cares? He doesn't have a victory.
Right.
So I wanted the fight to be Batman puts his all into it. He hits Dick with everything he's got, and Dick gets up and hits him back. And so it got bloody and it got bad. To me, that was Batman showing, I know it's a little twisted, but to me that was Batman showing him, look, I respect you enough to fight you like this. I'm not going to hold back. I'm not going to just ask. I'm not going to sort of be half of who the fighter I am. I'm going to fight you the way I wouldn't fight anybody, because you're Dick Grayson. You can beat me on this level. And that's the way I viewed it. And other people viewed it sort of like, oh, this was a father being mean to his child. And I can see that. And I can see sort of how the love of the character can lead to that. And I can't do anything except respect that opinion. I mean, you can't fight that. It's from a place of love. What are you going to do?
You're supposed to be angry during the sequence, though. I mean, I guess for me as a viewer caring about these characters, I do. I care deeply about Bruce Wayne. I care deeply about Dick Grayson. But one of the things as I've gotten older, I've come to realize about Batman is how broken he is. As a kid, you don't see him that way.
Yeah,
you kind of see he's Batman. He's all powerful, and you get this idea that Batman, overplans. And all of these things are true that you think about Batman. He strategizes everything and overplans, but that's because he's so broken. And that's the part of it that, like, once you get comfortable with it, he works on a completely different level, and you almost respect him more from overcoming his own emotional handicaps to keep pressing on for his mission. Like, and even the mission itself is, signs that the man's very broken as well. This is my favorite character I'm talking about too. But, you sit there and you look at those things, and that sequence, I think that comes out so clearly, because Dick Grayson, to me, was always the level-headed conscience almost of Batman in a way that Alfred can't be. Alfred is, but Dick Grayson does it in a way where they're equals meeting on the battlefield. And this is the guy that, for the longest time, when he was Batman, he took over, and Damian and Dick Grayson were running the show. The character really was written so well in that format that I was convinced that, like, wow, wait a minute. As much as I love Bruce Wayne, I would be okay with Dick Grayson staying Batman because it's starting to work. I'm becoming a believer. So you take that and take a look at these two guys now going to toe-to-toe in a way that shows us that, he wasn't a throwaway heir to the mantle. He really is the heir to the mantle. He can handle that in his own way and showcase that. That whole sequence just, to me, broadcast everything that we'd seen leading up to that point between the two of them in a way that made sense. It was brutal, but I don't know how it could have been anything other than that, considering the capabilities of both men.
Yeah, exactly. And I had a line in there that I had to fight for, which was in the very last thing, right before Robin, right before Dick hits Batman. I had a line where Batman says, he's talking, he's saying nobody can do this mission because they're weak and they wouldn't make the sacrifices. They're not as committed to this cause. Only someone, I could do it, and you can do it. Those are the only two people. And he says to Dick, he says, are you them or are you me? And editorial came back and they said, oh, you made a typo here. You meant to say, are you like them or are you like me? I said, no, it wasn't a typo. To Batman, the investment he has into Dick is more than he has in himself. I mean, he sees Dick as himself. He wants Dick to be as good as he is. It's not are you like me? It's are you me? Are you as good as me? Are you that heir? That's the question he's asking him. And when Dick comes back and says, I'm not your boy, and hits him, and sort of doesn't accept those terms, Batman's response to that is good. Like, that's what I would do. I wouldn't accept someone saying, are you me? I would be my own man. So it's almost a double trap. Batman's thinking 6 steps ahead of everybody. He's the greatest chess player of all time. And so he's saying, it's a double thing. He's saying, by saying you're not me, by being your own independent man, you're being like me. You're being independent. You're being like the man I want you to be. You're the man I taught you to be. I wanted to get into those issues. Because, like, and to me, I go back to Dick Grayson being Batman during Prodigal. Like, that's what and I remember how excited I was for that. I was probably like 13 when that came out. And then to see him during the Snyder run be Batman again, yeah, he fits into that role perfectly. And what makes Dick Grayson great is that he has the same origin as Batman. His parents died right in front of him. It's almost an exact parallel. But he did not have that insanity that Batman had, that you talk about, that thing that sort of drove Batman crazy. Dick didn't have that. And the reason that didn't happen, the reason Dick Grayson has that edge to him that Batman doesn't have, is because Batman was raised overseas and by trainers and things. Dick Grayson was raised by Batman. Batman was the influence in Dick's life that didn't allow him to go as crazy as Batman went. Batman is the force that makes Dick good. He's why Dick can be a little lighter. It's why Dick can be a little less obsessed and a little more of a fun character, is because he was raised by this figure who raised him well.
And I like that the fight was, at the end, it really wasn't about winning physically. It was winning emotionally. Because, Dick Grayson's basically saying at the end that he's not compromising himself. And there's something to that I think, when he left and became Robin, leader of the Teen Titans, and then became Nightwing, and all of those steps, Dick Grayson never sacrificed who he was. He went through his own emotional journeys of roller coaster, just like any character would, but there's a consistency to who this character is, even at his darkest hours, that is really important. And I just loved the way that all played out, because at the end, you could debate back and forth, who won the fight or how that works. There's something to that I think there's a definitive ending, but there's an ambiguity there that works as well. And I love those moments. I love those moments.
Yeah, I mean, comics work because we use fighting as metaphor a lot of times. Also, fighting is awesome. When I first got the scene, it's basically an exposition scene. It's Batman giving his mission concept. It's sort of that scene in every James Bond movie where M comes down and says, "Okay, here's what you have to do." But I didn't want people sitting around the table, so I had a huge fight, and I wanted that to work character-wise. But yeah, to me, the idea was Dick Grayson was captured and killed and basically humiliated in front of on TV, and had to be saved by Lex Luthor of all people. And to me, he was at a very sort of low point. He was at a very low point there, sort of, here he's trying to be, Dick Grayson is trying to do something very hard. He doesn't have superpowers. He hangs out with Superman. He hangs out with the Teen Titans. He hangs out with the Justice League. And he doesn't have what they have. He has to rely only on his wits and skill. And here, his wits and skill he didn't have enough. He got captured and got killed. And Batman has to pick him up from that and sort of set him straight and say, no, you're still great. Even though you got captured and killed, even though you were at this low moment, you are still Dick Grayson, goddamn. You're still Nightwing. You're still Robin. You can come back from this. And the way he does that is to show him how great you are, is that you can, even from this moment, even at this low moment, you can beat me in a fight. And if you can beat Batman in a fight, then you can you can do all right in this world. So, I mean, it's that metaphor for sort of a little tough love when you sort of have a friend who's in a bad situation or a low point in their self-esteem, and you say to them, no. Think of what you can do. Think of how great you are. That's what Batman's doing, but because it's comics, he's doing it through his fists.
I love that this is Batman's version of an ABC after-school special. I'm telling you, right? It is. No, but I mean, and that really, because Bruce can't have those conversations the way we've seen Bruce have those conversations, but they're never driven by him. They're driven by those around him pushing him to that place. Yeah. He doesn't know how to initiate that. He doesn't know how to deal with things in that level. With him, it's all about the mission and him pushing past through his physical prowess, through dealing with emotions, in that in-your-face manner. That's part of what that fight was all about, because that's the only way Bruce knows how to test things. He can't do it through conversation. It's just not him. Even though there was a lot of conversation there, it's a very Batman way of testing the waters. The dialogue was really his way of adding impact to the punch, as he was, for lack of a better way of putting it. There was something that's so interesting about and real about that moment between those two, because it's who they are. It's not something you want to see all the time between them, nor should you see all the time between the two of them. Yeah. But in this case, he's asking Dick to give up everything. And not even just to give up everything, because that would be easier than what he's really asking. You can't tell anyone that you're still here. People are going to hurt because of this badly. And there's nothing I can do about that, because once we tell one person, even Alfred, you're now compromising the mission. Because once you tell one person, they're going to crack with somebody else, because you can't help it. Because if we do that and we cave, we're now giving permission for somebody else to cave. Because we did it. So we have to make this rule, and we have to stick to it, which is hard. And I love the emotion of that, because if you ignore that underlying emotion, the fight doesn't make any sense. But when you see that emotion, it does. It had to have been a hard one to write.
It was very tough. If you see, there's not a lot of back and forth between the two. This is Bruce Wayne has sort of he doesn't, obviously he hates seeing I always sound like Nightwing, great Robin, Dick. He hates seeing Dick suffer. And if you look at the issue, I wrote it as a monologue. He doesn't respond to Dick. He has a plan in his head that he's executing. And he's almost ignoring the pain around him because he knows eventually Dick will win, because Batman knows these things. And he's, like I said, he's 6 steps ahead of you. So he's monologuing because he's waiting for that moment when Dick realizes, I still have it in me and I can beat this guy. I can get off the floor. You know, I'm not, of all the DC heroes in the DC superhero universe, I'm not going to be the one who falls. I'm going to always get back. I'm never going to give up. I mean, that's who Dick Grayson is. And Batman knows that. So he's monologuing, he's waiting for that moment. When it finally comes, that's a huge relief to Batman. He wants to be beat here. So, yeah, but yeah, Batman's dealing with some issues. I mean, Bruce Wayne has this. He could fight crime through charity work and sort of the traditional ways, but he has that, he saw violence. He saw what violence did to his life, and that had a deep psychological effect on him, and he sees a solution of problems through violence, and that's probably because he saw his parents killed when he was little. And also because I like writing fight scenes in comics, and it's cool. It's funny, you talk about Tim and I and how we work together. I was a philosophy and history major, so I'm always talking these sort of lofty little themes, and Tim is always about, like, let's do something fucking cool. And that's why we work so well together. We keep he keeps me grounded, and I try to lift him off the ground.
One of the things I really digged about this issue, especially you can see in the 3 different parts, was the usage of the inner dialogue. The first and third, we get some nice inner dialogue moments. You get Leslie telling the story. You got, Dick Grayson in part 3 doing just getting the setup for Grayson. But in that second section, you have just pure action. You have the dialogue between them, but you don't have that inner dialogue. You don't have that what they're thinking. So what we get is what we physically see here, and I think that had a just as powerful impact as the physical action. Is just the fact that this is it right here.
Yeah, I've said this before, so this is not a reveal, but we're, not as a writing exercise, but because this is how we want to write it, we're not using inner monologue in Grayson. So the inner monologue you see in the end of Nightwing 30 is the last time you're going to see in Dick's mind for a little while. It's going to be all action and dialogue. And the reason, there's a few reasons. Story-wise, we're doing a spy series, which is about who knows what when, and sort of keep you guessing. And so we don't want to be inside people's heads because it'll ruin some of the tension, and then that's part of the fun of it. But on another level, I come from a novelistic background, and also Tim comes from Revival, where he doesn't use inner monologue at all. And both of us we're into show over tell. We want people to be looking at these panels. We want the art to tell the story. We want the action to tell the story. We're not here to write a sort of a novel with fancy words. We want the emotion and the power to be on the page and sort of not in caption boxes.
That sounds awesome. I'm actually, as you're talking, I'm like, oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah, I got that original theory. I think I come from JMS, from his Supreme series.
Yeah,
if you guys remember that, he wrote that. That was the first time I noticed someone doing that, which I loved. It was one of the series that brought me back to comics. I have one of those traditional gaps that everyone has between sort of high school and their adulthood, and I was like, why is this so good? Why is this so mesmerizing? And then I didn't even realize it, and I read his introduction. He's like, I wrote this entirely without captions. I was like, that's an amazing way to write something, to sort of, and I come from the school of writing. If you read my books, I'm very simple. I come from the sort of Hemingway classic American tradition, where a character is action. You try not to get into your characters' heads too much. Just let people see what your characters are doing, then they'll understand them. And I think for a generation raised on TV and film as their primary medium, which I was, and most of us are, I think that's almost more natural. You don't have too much. When you watch Game of Thrones, you're not inside everyone's head. You don't have Tyrion constantly with overlay. So I like to write that way, and Tim likes to write that way. So hopefully you'll see the impact.
I would watch a Game of Thrones miniseries though, where you could get in the head of the Lannisters. I'm with you. I wouldn't want it on the main series, but it could be like an offshoot or something like that. Just because they're so fascinating.
Well, when it's done well, I mean, when it's done well, narration is the most powerful tool available to us. I mean, when you look at like a Brubaker, how he uses it, he's probably my favorite person who uses it now. Or how Vaughn does it in Saga with the child telling the story. It can be thrilling and great, but it can also be a crutch that too many writers use to sort of tell the story that they're not seeing in the art. So we're going to work without the crutch for a while.
Well, see, I was giggling just because before, you guys don't know this listening, we started off our discussion by talking about Game of Thrones.
We did. I just watched this finale. It's great.
Yeah. And one of the great things about that show is you're constantly left wanting more. So, like, the idea that, like, but if we did a miniseries of this, we would get more on some level. I'm like, all right, I'll take that. You know, I think with comics, and I think it's true of novels, I think it's true of any medium, games, whatever, nowadays in film and television, you want to try unique deliveries that match the subject matter because there's so much product out there that you're competing with. So, you know, if it matches the type of story you're trying to tell, and it's a unique experience, that is where you get devotion to the series from. That's when you start citing things like, hey, when I read Supreme Power, which I adored, because I was a big fan of the original Squadron Supreme miniseries.
Me too, man. Yeah. We could talk about that for the next hour.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff was, like, killer. So when JMS had an opportunity to, like, relaunch that, you know, you start getting into some... Jim, have you read any of that stuff?
No, I haven't.
I actually would recommend all of it. There, you can get there's a trade of Squadron Supreme that you can get, or a hardcover that you can get easily now because they've collected it so many times. Mainly, it started getting collected again when Supreme Power launched because it just created a new fan base for the original Squadron Supreme. It was kind of like Marvel's alternate universe, where they brought in these characters that had been a guest star in the Avengers. And, you know, they had, like, their own Earth with their own story.
It was like the original Watchmen to me. It came out like a year, 1984 or 5. It came up.
Very mature. It was a very mature story at the time for the miniseries and the run. It was very different. So then JMS had the opportunity to relaunch it, and again, as another mature, it was part of the Marvel's line, that more mature line of books that they were doing. I want to make sure we talk about the Tokyo sequence, because now, you know, we've left the Batcave, and there was this opportunity for us to start seeing what Dick Grayson's mission is going to be like. I really liked the changing art teams. I liked that there were 3 distinct art teams, and we finally got to see what I'm guessing Grayson's going to look like as a book in the final sequence. Because it was beautiful to see this sequence where this guy was being singled out for points by, you know, with the Cain symbol we saw again in the beginning. It was bookending what happened there. But now seeing Dick Grayson's involvement in this world, trying to get noticed, I loved how that played out.
Oh, I love that sequence. That's Mikhail Janin, who's doing the artwork on the Grayson series. And if you don't know him, he did Justice League Dark. And if you don't know him, you're about to know him, because I feel like I just got Jim Lee on X-Men. His art is brilliant, and it's beautiful, and I'm so incredibly proud of the work he's going to put in this book. It's tight, but he also puts action into his pages. It comes sort of out of that classic DC style, but it's not stiff like some of that can be. It really has movement and flow to it, and he loves to draw like international places. He's from Spain, and this book's going around the world, so he's very much into that. Yeah, so just art-wise, the last third of that book, how beautiful it is how beautiful Grayson's going to be. And God, he draws a damn fine-looking Dick Grayson and Helena Bertinelli.
Justice League Dark, one of the cool things about that book, when we talked about it on the show, was the way that the magical worlds and the places that they traveled to were crafted in that series. It was just so gorgeous. And the characters. I mean, it was hard not to be mesmerized by not just the art, but then, you know, how it was married to the dialogue. And that was when I realized that was who was going to be on this series, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be really nice. Especially when you see that St. Petersburg, Russia, that whole balloon sequence is absolutely stunning.
Is that crazy? And they made the background, if you see in the original pencils, they made the background a little blurry to make the foreground a little to spot out. But those lines are there on the page. That's all drawn. That's not photoshopped in. It's just an amazing background, and he just did that. And you just flip by it. You don't realize the detail he put into that. Yeah, it's beautiful. Oh man, yeah. Mikhail's going to be a huge star. Not only is he great at writing and drawing the series, his character designs are amazing. I mean, he did we all did together. But the thing he did for Helena and the new Dick costume, and then there's some brand new characters that are coming up. I mean, they're going to blow your mind. I mean, these are classic creations he's making.
I geeked out at Helena Bertinelli being in this.
Right.
I'm a huge fan of the character, and her fate was alluded to back in the Huntress miniseries, but it left you open with the possibility, like especially seeing her now being involved with Spiral, this would make sense. Actually, in many ways, I'm guessing there's a similar journey for her to what Dick Grayson's going through, except she wound up with Spiral. So I'm anxious to see what her backstory is, what she's going to be like, because it's a favorite character of mine. I'm a big fan of Huntress, both versions. I grew up loving the character, and it's great to see her being brought back into the New 52 proper from our Earth, to see, the Helena Bertinelli here. I can't wait to see how that's going to play out.
I know, I'm super excited. Joey Cavallari, who created this Helena Bertinelli, still works at DC Comics. He's an editor. And one of the first things I did was I emailed him like, I can't believe they're letting me work with this character. Thank you for making her all those years ago. She is brilliant. And we've set up this, what we're going to try to do, again, I'm going to go with the lofty themes, but it's sort of a parallel to what we had before with sort of Batman and Robin, where she's almost the Batman in this new series. She's the seasoned spy. She's been through this. She almost has an origin very similar to Batman, and she watched her parents die. Again, we have this parallel again. And we're going to see how Dick, being under a beautiful female who has that relationship with Batman, how that plays with him, and that the parallels to her life and Batman's life and his life, and how all that mixes together, and that going forward affects him and affects her. Is going to be great. Yeah, she's an insanely good character.
Where did the bringing her into the series come from? I don't want to put you in a position where I'm compromising things that you need to reveal within the series, but I find that I'm like, yes, they're bringing her in here. I'm curious to see who came up with that idea. How did that come about?
That comes from the brilliant mind of Tim Seeley. Although, wait. Am I still going to get paid if she takes off as a character? Never mind. It came from both of our minds. In Tim's original pitch, he had a sort of a strong female character, and there were a few sort of, can we use this character? We didn't sort of know going in who we could use in the Bat universe. And we asked for Helena Bertinelli. We didn't think they'd give her to us, and they said yes. And we're like, yes, of course, because obviously the Huntress is already in the DCU, but it's the more altered the first Huntress, and the second Huntress with that so cool origin of the mafia boss and all that. I mean, that we wanted to play with that, and to make her a super spy. Oh yeah, no, that's so cool. And she has a very clear arc in this. She's not just Dick Grayson. She's not the sort of Vicky Vale to Dick Grayson. She's a character in her own right who's going to take her own steps here and act both independently, and she's at the center of the story almost as much as he is.
I love that this is an opportunity, besides giving Dick Grayson a new status quo and furthering his story in the New 52, it's an opportunity to bring in a character like Helena Bertinelli into the New 52 to establish, because at conventions, one of the things you constantly hear from people who are nervous or have been nervous about the New 52 is they're asking for some of their favorites that have vanished.
Yeah.
The ones that have not been established because the main characters are so much younger that they haven't had the history where these characters would have popped into their lives. So I'm always happy when I see a character that I've loved for years growing up reading, established in a way that's organic, where it doesn't feel like it's forced. It's kind of like, hey, this is at this juncture in Dick Grayson's life, let's encounter somebody, and rather than just create somebody that, I'm a fan of new characters and all that, so don't get me wrong on that, but this is also a great opportunity to really take somebody from DC Mythos and bring them in a way that's going to be powerful and hopefully will take off in a way where this character will have some major impact in the universe in general. And especially when it's going to be a Bat book, in the way that it's structured, it's great to have a character like that brought in. I was geeking at the last page. I was totally geeking out at the last page.
I'm a continuity geek, nerd. I maybe that's not fashionable anymore, but one of the things I love about comics is the idea that it's one big story, and the idea that it stretches back 75 years and it touches on all these things, and that you can go back into that history and that it all connects. And I approach the New 52, I think, like a lot of people do, sort of some trepidation that, they're sort of getting rid of that thing I love about comics, which is the connections to the old stories. But they've done a fantastic job tying it into it. And to me, at least in the way Tim and I are going to write this, we're gonna build on that continuity. We don't view ourselves as picking up these characters absolutely brilliantly fresh. We look at ourselves as picking up characters that have a history, that have been around for a while, and doing our takes on them, just like Marv Wolfman did his take, and Joey C did his take, and we see ourselves in that tradition. We're not working with these characters like, we made Helena Bertinelli. No, this is a Helena Bertinelli who needs to be connected to that long history she's had. And the same with Dick being Batman. So to me, Dick Grayson, the Dick Grayson that's in this book is the Dick Grayson who was in the 1940s comics. It's all to me. It's one big story. So we want to work with that and build on that.
See, that gets me excited. I'm like you. I'm a continuity junkie. I love that stuff. I love the history. I don't have a problem when they do relaunches like this. I think one of the things I liked about the New 52 was Flashpoint, because Flashpoint directly connects this to the previous history. So all those stories did happen.
Yes.
It's just that Flashpoint was this shift sideways. So, all that, for people to say, well, none of the history matters anymore. I'm like, no, if you take a look at Flashpoint, that's the bridge. It's right there. So all that stuff does matter.
It's funny, people forget that this is not, that it wasn't like they just, like the company said, okay, we're starting over and forgetting all that. There is a connection between these two universes. They do talk to each other, and it is still one sort of big story. And Flashpoint, exactly. And I know with Batman, it's especially hard because the 5-year gap between the start of the universe and where we are now is very hard to stuff all the Robin history in there, and that's very difficult in the Bat universe, and we're struggling, and a lot of writers struggle with that. But I view those 5 years sort of in terms of, since Flashpoint dealt with speed and dealt with that idea of the Speed Force, I view it sort of the way sort of a relativity of time. 5 years here at certain speed is not 5 years to you, and I look at those 5 years as somewhat fudgeable, so that we can fit in a lot of those stories that took place in the old universe, and that those are still having effects on this continuity.
Do either of you guys watch 24?
I watched the first 5 seasons.
Okay. So the only reason why I bring it up, I'm convinced the way I've kind of worked out in my mind Batman fitting into the 5-year arc is his life is a lot like what Jack Bauer's was like in one season of 24. The stuff that happens in an episode of that show, you have to be moving quick, and it's just nonstop. So I guess if you look at Batman from a 24 perspective, that's the only way it would work, and it does. And just now that we're reading Batman in present day, he's had to slow down a bit.
It's been a very emotional journey these last 5 years. Yeah. He is exhausted.
Yes. So, even though he's still moving and he's still got, the props and everything where he can still hold his own in a fight with Dick Grayson in the Batcave, he had to slow down a little bit.
Yeah, well, anyone after that. After that. Yeah.
What would you, for people who maybe haven't read Nightwing 30 or, are looking forward to Grayson as a jumping on point for, what would you tell people? What is Grayson? If you had to give a blurb for it right now for somebody maybe who hasn't been a Nightwing reader and they're looking for that new book to jump on, what is Grayson for them?
Grayson is your favorite James Bond movie taking place in the DC universe. It's as if Tom Clancy suddenly got a hold of Dan DiDio and they could come up with an idea together. I mean, this is a super spy. This is the best super spy. Dick Grayson, because he was raised by Batman, he's always lived in that shadow, and he's always sort of known that he can never be the world's greatest detective. Someone already has that title, but he might be the world's greatest spy. And so that's what this series is. It's that moment in James Bond movies where you stand up, that moment where he adjusts his tie and he's about to get the bad guy. We're putting that in the DCU.
That's awesome. So it's Dick Grayson's way to continue to establish himself as being something beyond just being in Batman's shadow?
I mean, he's not. Dick is not a kind of character sort of worries about that kind of thing. He doesn't see himself as either sort of in the shadow or out of the shadow. He's more relaxed in that. He's more confident of who he is and himself. So he's not constant. He's not that sort of dark, brooding character. Oh, am I this? Am I that? But this is a way for Dick Grayson to save the world, because he is the character who will do what he can to save the world.
Jim, was there anything? I know I'm which I usually do, rambling on. Is there anything that you wanted to ask, or any questions that you have that you haven't had a chance to get to?
Well, actually, you've been asking all the questions I have, but I am going to make a statement that I was looking forward to, Grayson 1, and I was like, because I like, Dick Grayson, and as you guys were talking, I'm just quietly sitting here enjoying the front row seat for the show, because I'm like, yeah, awesome. But now, man, I am very excited for this. I was looking forward to it. I was like, oh, this would be kind of a cool thing, because I do like the spy end of it, and I like that aspect of it. But just the couple of the stuff that you've been saying here, I'm like, man, this is going to be a really cool thing, especially when you talk about the no inner dialogue. Just that is a thing, because I'm looking at some of this art sequence, especially in Uganda with the car sequence, and just the way the creative team did with the motion swerves and the skidding as he's basically surfing the hood, trying to take out the bad guy and knocking him out of the car, and all just that action sequence within one page, ending with the grab onto the helicopter, the big explosion behind him. I'm hearing the da 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 da. I'm hearing that as I'm watching, as I'm reading this book. So I'm pumped for this.
Oh, that's awesome to hear, man. If I can plug, so the first two issues are wonderful, and Tim see the script and we plotted them together. The third issue, which will be the Future's End issue, which is my first full 20-page script, it's one probably maybe my favorite thing I've ever written. I'm not sure, but I love it, and it's not sort of a normal sort of crossover where you kind of like dismiss it. No, the editorial made him do something. I tried to write something that I think people are going to be talking about. So don't let it pass you by. You just think, oh, it's a crossover. It has to do with that other story. It's directly tied into Grayson, and it's directly tied into the character of who Dick is. It's a big, deep character dive into Dick, and it's told in a interesting way that we do something a little different with the medium that hasn't been done very often, and maybe never quite like this, just in terms of storytelling. Future's End.
I'm really excited for this, because every time you throw out a James Bond reference, to me, growing up, I've always been I'm a huge James Bond fan.
Right.
And as a Batman fan, there's a natural marriage between being a fan of both because of the gadgets, the gizmos, and the cases. There's a lot of similarities between the colorful characters that they've interacted with, but also they're all rooted in this deep espionage, detective work, whatever you want to call it. There's obviously so many different genres that can be pulled into what they're doing. But to me, that was always my joy growing up. This was the kind of media that I liked being a part of. I liked seeing and was interested in. So I'm very glad to hear that this series is going to have those kind of tones, because I think it's a natural fit for this world, as opposed if you were making Dick Grayson a counselor somewhere, and we just see him doing every issue, sitting, talking to people. I think he'd be a great one, because he's that kind of approachable guy. But, if you don't do something where we're showcasing the fact that this guy was an acrobat, you got to have that element to him as well.
I love that the Chuck Dixon McDaniel Nightwing series. It's beautiful. But him as a cop, I'm like, he just seems so confined. Like, I can't see him filling out paperwork. I like the idea that he's outside. He needs room. Dick Grayson needs room to bounce around. I don't know.
It's just going to be awesome. So I can't wait. So it's Grayson 1 and 2, and then you're going to have the 5 years later story, which I think is going to be really cool. It's great to see where this series is going to be headed.
Oh yeah, it's. I'm telling you, when that comes on, I'll come back on, because I'm going to want to dissect that one page for page.
Oh, let's definitely plan to do that.
Here's the teaser. We answer the question. Now, all I do lately is read old Robin issues, but in 3, we're going to actually have an answer to the question of why Robin wears such a garishly colored outfit.
Oh, that's
cool.
Be there. That's cool.
After 75 years, we're answering the question.
Well, let's definitely plan that then. We'll tell for everyone listening, definitely pick up the 5 years later issue because we will talk about it on the show. So it's definitely a reason to pick it up because we're definitely going to follow up with a discussion on it. And actually, if anybody listening to this wants to, please send in your questions, or if you want to send in voicemails relating to that issue, we'd love to have them part of the discussion as well.
Absolutely. And if anyone, I'm on Twitter, so I'm just Tom King TK, just my name and my initials, Tom King TK. Reach out to me.
Is there anything else you'd like to shout out as far as websites or Facebook or anything that you would like people to be pointed to in order to find out more about you and your work?
I'm on Facebook. I'm Tom King /author on Facebook. I have a fan page. You can like me there and reach out to me there. But Twitter's fine. Things I want to point. I want to give a shout out. I don't mention them enough. So I work with two of my best friends are huge Batman fans. Like diehard, like they know every single detail, and I use them as sort of a baseboard to make sure I'm not fucking everything up. So I want to shout them out: Chris Campbell and Daryl Taylor of the Taylor Network. There's a ton of podcasts, and Chris Campbell is a uber Valiant fan. He's a Valiant podcast, so yeah. I do want to shout them out and just say thank you for all the help they've given me.
I'm a huge fan of Daryl. I love the Valiant podcast because I'm a Valiant junkie. So it's it's nice to have a Valiant podcast out there that's so well done. So we'll have all of that in the show notes, all the links to you and to their podcasts and their websites as well. So if you're listening to this, you don't need to write any of that down. Just go straight to the show notes or our website, and you'll have direct links right from there. Yeah,
there's a continuity error in Nightwing 30. I just made a Batman mistake where I did something wrong, and I didn't notice it, and they noticed it, and they're just giving me a lot of shit about it. So if you see it, and you see the error, Twitter me so we can talk about it. I'm interested who sees it. I thought that would be the thing most people would be mad at me about, but nobody's caught it yet.
Oh, wow. Go back through and look for it now. It's a quest.
I just want to say my con appearances. I will be at San Diego. I think I'm doing some signings at DC, and I'm doing the Batman panel, which is amazing. I can't believe I'm going to that.
Nice.
And I'm going to be on there on the panel. Wow. Anyways, I'll be the very nervous one at the front, trying not to get Scott Snyder's autograph in front of everybody. And I'll also be at Baltimore Comic Con, and I'll be at New York City Comic Con. So come to my table and say hi, and we'll talk some dick.
That's really cool, actually. Your first Batman panel. I didn't even think of things like that. You know, those. It's got to be something that would make you obviously nervous because it's a big panel and things like that, but also very rewarding. That like, wow, look at this. You know, I have this opportunity to be a part of. You know, because I'm used to being in the audience for those and watching it in awe. I can't imagine what it'd be like to actually be up at the table.
I know, isn't it crazy? I went to Comic-Con to San Diego for the first time 2 years ago just to sort of wander the floor and give out free copies of my book. And then I went last year and I had a table in Artist Alley and I gave like a presentation on writing. And this year I'm going to go and be on an actual like comic book panel and do signings. I mean, I'm a huge fan, and to sort of be on the other side, it just blows my mind. I must have done something right in a previous life.
Well, that's awesome. Congratulations to you. I mean, that's really cool to, you know, kind of enjoy that journey with you. And I think for people listening to this, they'll get that vibe as well. You know, it's nice for us to see one of our own kind of graduate into this. I mean, it's cool to just be a part of that whole process because we don't get to see that very often. You know, we're usually the ones that we see the product. And we get to know the creators through, like, okay, you know, Tom's had a lengthy run on Grayson. That's how we know Tom now. In this case, we got to know you, for people who listen to this podcast, through your book, through your Valiant short story, through your short stories from Vertigo. Your short story from Vertigo, I should say, from that Time Warp. So it's nice to see you graduate to like this now. It's neat. It's so I don't know. I'm thrilled to death for you. It's really cool.
Thanks, man. That means so much to me. It means the world. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, Tom, thank you very much for joining us. We're really glad to have you on the show.
It was really an honor, guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, man.
There they are, all alone except for that old character.
So, Jim, you and I have toyed around with this quite a bit over the past few weeks because 400 is coming up quickly for us. You know, it's really in 4 shows after this one is 400. So we wanted to think of something that we would do that would be special and unique. And you threw out some terrific ideas. And between the two of us, we had one major idea of something that we're going to do. And I don't want to reveal what that is because we're going to do it in the future at some point because I love the idea.
Raging Bullets, the musical.
Yeah, it is. It's Jim and I singing. And honestly, you know, having me say I'm actually the dance portion,
yes.
Which on a podcast is going to be real interesting. You know how bad of a dancer I am. You know why there's a joke. Actually, my dancing kind of matches your singing.
Hey, I'm not that bad.
That's all right. I'll give you credit. I don't really have an argument for that one. Episode 400, I was sitting around and I was thinking about the fact that you and I throw out constant references to Catwoman, and I really have only seen it once. And I was thinking, you know, on the show, one of the things that we're known for is, well, you guys always talk about things you love, and it's always all positive and things like that. I thought it would be interesting for us, knowing how we are as people, the fact that we try to see the best in everything and we try to go in for enjoyment. What if we did an episode surrounding bad DC cinema? You know, and just embraced the fun of that, you know, and had a really good time with it. So we were talking about it, and like, let's talk about like the major, what's considered a major bad DC cinema. So Catwoman obviously came to mind because we constantly reference it on the show. But the fun part about Catwoman to me is you've already referenced that there's scenes that you like in Catwoman quite a bit. So I thought it'd be fun to talk about the pros and cons of the films. Superman, The Quest for Peace. Had to be another, right?
Yeah.
So we have to talk about that one, but it would be interesting. We're going to tear these apart. We're going to analyze them like scene by scene. So knowing us, we're going to see scenes in there that we really love, and other scenes where we're like, "What did you think?" And I think it'd be fun to have a real discussion about that. And knowing us, we're probably not going to agree on which scenes we think are great or which scenes we think are awful. So that'd be really fun to do that. And then also Batman and Robin. You know, I've got to get some George Clooney in there as well. So, and Arnold and, you know, the whole gang. And I can't even, I'm having trouble even mentioning that Bane was in that film. So we're going to do a real dissection of those three movies. That's worthy of 400. You know, it's something that's big, something that's epic, something that we wouldn't do normally. So it's going to be Raging Bullets Celebrates Bad DC Cinema. That's episode 400. So send in your own thoughts of those films. You know, what did you like? And try not to make it all just what you disliked. What did you like about it that maybe you think you're afraid to admit to people that you actually liked about those films? Because, you know, they had an audience. People came to them. Were there sequences that you liked in it that you're ashamed to admit that you liked? I think that's going to be part of the uncomfortable part of the podcast. It's going to be more of a, well, I actually kind of liked this part.
And to be honest, there may be people out there who actually enjoyed those movies.
Yes.
And if you did, please let us know. You know, because one, we always like a discussion. We always like other opinions on things. So if you actually enjoyed those movies, give us, let us know. Give us some reasoning. Talk about what you thought about the movie.
Well, here's the thing: Superman Quest for Peace, in particular, out of all those films, I haven't seen that in years. I got the Superman collection when it came out on DVD, a few years ago when they kind of collected all the movies. I never watched it. Mainly because of the fact that it's been so universally panned. I think that affected me. I just never bothered. I watched the ones. I like 1 and 2, and I like 3, which I know some people pan 3. I actually quite like the battle between evil Superman and good Superman that goes on in that. So but I can't tell you, I know the premise of Quest for Peace. I can't remember the film. So I would love to sit down. This for me is going to be almost like a first viewing of this movie. Which is why I thought it would be so interesting to throw that one in there, because I can't remember. Do you remember the movie? I don't want you to go into a synopsis right now, but you vividly remember that one.
I'm going to say I vividly remember it. I know there's going to be some stuff that I've forgotten, but the main premise behind the movie and some of the key sequences in it, I remember. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting discussion.
I don't know that I saw that one in the theater. Which is strange.
I know I didn't see it in the theater.
Because 1, 2, and 3 I definitely saw in the theater and have vivid memories of, especially 2, which is like my short list of favorites because I loved the whole Zod and all that stuff. But 4, I don't know. I don't know why I didn't see 4 in the theater. If I didn't, it's one I don't remember. So I'm going to have a lot of fun discussing that one. It's going to be a fun episode. Because I called you up, as is typical with you, you're great to work with because of this. You immediately are like, oh, that sounds cool, and I know what I want to do. So I'm looking forward to it because I wanted it to be an episode that you and I both wanted to do. Because to me, if it's going to be an anniversary episode, there has to be a motivation for both of us something exciting, because I want it to be exciting for the listeners, and the only way that's going to happen is if you and I are excited going in, because I think that's, one of the keys. Send us in your own thoughts. Hey, and here's the other thing, too. Feel free to send in if there's bad DC cinema that you would like to, especially if there's ones where you're like, hey, this one gets universally panned, but I actually quite liked it. Feel free to call in with those as well, because I think it would be fun to talk about this, because I know, knowing you and I, when we analyze these things from start to finish, we're going to find things of all three of those movies that we both like that it's going to be really uncomfortable to talk about, because we're going to have to admit that.
We'll have to admit some of the stuff we liked, and then we'll say, okay, you know what? I can't defend this. Mm-hmm. There's going to be sequences that we can't defend, that no level of positivity. Well, look at the positive side. No, there's some stuff, but I'm very excited to look. I'm very excited with this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited. 400 episodes. It came up so quick, it didn't even dawn on me that we're almost at 400. That's a biggie for us.
Wow.
Yeah. That I never thought when we did. I was happy when we hit 50. So, so the idea that we're actually going to be hitting 400 soon is really exciting. If you want to send in anything relating to 400, it doesn't have to be just about the topic of the show. If you want to send in parodies about us, songs, well wishes, anything that you would like to have a part of the show, if you want to send in artwork to put on the website or something relating to 400, I'd love to have people a part of the show in any way that they would want to be. So please feel free to use our voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or drnorge on Skype. You can also get us at ragingbullets@icloud.com or ragingbullets@gmail.com. It actually forwards to that. That's been the consistent show email address, and it still works just fine. So feel free, if there's stuff that you would like to send in. Please, if you send an email, put in the subject line that it's for episode 400. That just lets me know to set it aside and make sure that I make that a part of the episode. I would love as much listener participation as possible for people that are interested in saying something about it. So whether you're a newer listener or a longtime listener, that show's kind of a biggie for us. So great stuff.
Green Lantern, let you and I destroy that space junk.
I want to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. Remember, that's always available in our show notes. We love having you a part of our show, and voicemails will return next episode. Sponsoring this episode, once again, is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, be sure to check out Grayson issue number 2, $2.99 regularly, 40% off, only $179. Also, over at InStockTrades.com, remember you can get caught up at Nightwing. It's $14.99 regularly, 42% off, only $869 over at InStockTrades.com. Remember that you can find us at Facebook. We have a wonderful Facebook group that's separate from our Facebook page, and we share that with DCInfinite.com. It's a wonderful community, and if you want to talk comics or pop culture, it's the place to go, and I want to thank everyone who continues to participate over there. We are also available. We do have a show Facebook page. We have a show website, which is RagingBullets.com. That's where you'll find out when episodes are being released, news about the show. That does go into our Facebook page and also into our Twitter feed. We also have a Google Plus page. I have a personal Facebook page and a personal Google Plus page. You're welcome to add yourself on. I'd love to have conversations. I tend to post more from my personal Facebook account and use the show Raging Bullets account as a utility account for the podcast. So if you want to contact me directly, please feel free to add me on Facebook. I love chatting with everybody who listens to the podcast. Our next episode, we're going to check back in with Batman Zero Year, Batman Eternal, and the New 52 Futures End series. We're also going to take a look at Superman number 32 and the brand new creative team. We will see you then.
Bye!
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Faded for love and flaws and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman. The villains are closing in. Be the Thenin Guard or Egyptian, working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up